Okay, so Tom, tell me about the limited mental health license.
Correct.
How does that work?
Well, the limited mental health license is unusual in the sense that the way the Florida statute reads is all about how we determine who a mental health resident is, which is one of the reasons why I'm here, because we had this discussion recently on some misinformation that was provided to assisted living facility that might have impacted your client negatively.
Right.
In the state of Florida, in the state of Florida, a mental health resident is defined as a person who receives Social Security due to a mental disorder and receives a state-funded program called Optional State Supplementation.
Which people know as OSS.
As OSS,
in the community or the environment, people know of OSS.
Right. And the OSS program takes a person who receives Social Security Supplemental Income, or SSI.
Right.
And when they live in an ALF, the state provides the ALF an additional payment
above their income,
above what their SSI payment is. Then they kick back to the resident, the ALF kicks back to the resident $54, which we call a personal needs allowance. And that is where they become an OSS recipient. The unusual thing about this is that when I teach my core training class and I try to explain to people who a mental health resident is, they focus solely on what the mental disorder is.
The diagnosis.
The diagnosis.
And that was the problem when I called Tom a couple weeks ago, which brought us back together. Tom and I have known each other for
years
and years, and we hadn't talked in a while, and I ran into a struggle, and he said that's not the case, and he helped us solve the problem, actually, and the client did not have to leave the building because the facility wanted her to stay and she wanted to stay, but they believed that they were up against these regulations.
Yeah, and it was tied into the type of medications they took, not into the actual definition of who a mental health resident is. Now, the problem is that most people think that to be a mental health resident in the state of Florida is tied into their diagnosis, but the one key qualifier has nothing to do with their diagnosis at all. It's if they receive OSS.
And see, this was so important. And I know this may kind of be going over your head. You're like, what are they talking about? But the reason why this stuff is really important, and we're going to talk about this in another segment, is you really have to be an informed consumer, because there's a lot to know, and you want to be in the residence that fits you, that's appropriate, that you need. But you need assistance from folks like Tom and professionals that can really help you figure this stuff out, because sometimes it can be a real difficult.
Yes.
And this was one that I needed Tom's help on.
And likewise, if I got a problem and I need to talk about guardianship or care management, I'm going to pick up the phone and call Teresa.
Right.
So with the limited mental health license, the state further goes on to further say that if you are an assisted living facility and you have one or more people who qualify as a mental health resident under the regulations, you have to have this special license called limited mental health.
For even one resident?
For one resident. It used to be 3 up until last year.
Okay.
Now, don't be misled by this. While there are probably about 1,200 limited mental health licenses in the state of Florida, there are a whole bunch of other ALFs that might deal with these special people who have a mental health diagnosis, but since they don't receive OSS money, they're not deemed to be a mental health resident despite their diagnosis.
Boy, that is like so confusing.
Yes,
okay.
It is.
All right. Okay, and the last thing I want to talk a little bit about was the concept of what is a memory unit. What does that mean? It's not a license.
No, it is.
Okay, so talk about it a little bit.
Well, there has been, over the years, since probably about the mid-90s, late 90s, we've seen more and more assisted living facilities specialize in their care for people with Alzheimer's or some form of dementia, which we call the memory care facility.
Right.
And there's also a very heightened awareness about the disease. That's why you see the Alzheimer's Association, and they have everything plastered all over because they want to really make sure everybody understands. And of course, Ronald Reagan getting the disease obviously helped push that on a lot.
Right.
So
it's not a license. It's a care concept.
That is correct.
Okay.
It is a care concept.
Okay.
Now, here's an interesting demographic that most people don't know. which is why we're seeing more and more memory care specific ALFs being built and more ALFs dealing with this special population.
Okay.
The demographic says that in the state of Florida itself, between now and 2026, there will be 200,000 Floridians with some form of dementia.
New or meaning newly diagnosed?
Or existing.
Or existing.
Yep.
Okay.
And what we see is the age of people with dementia is dropping.
Yeah. So now we're clear. So just, okay, I think we've got the facility licenses clear. We've got the standard, which is every one of them. Oh, you know what we didn't talk about was the number. So how many residents can a facility have? Like,
it depends on a lot of things.
Okay.
So when they apply for a license, based on zoning, based on building requirements, things like that, might determine who has a license. Now, one thing that people might find interesting is of the 3,000 plus licensed assisted living facilities in Florida, 66% of those are 25 beds or less.
So the majority are small ones,
Yes.
smaller ones.
40% of those are 6-bed homes that nobody knows about because they don't have a sign on the street corner. They don't have a huge marketing budget that allows them to purchase advertising.
A residential home environment.
Yes, residential home, and that's where ALF started.
Right,
Yes.
right.
ALF started in smaller homes, and when you really want to split the hair, assisted living started in Holland. The Dutch were the first people to take care of somebody else's parent or grandmother in their home.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
And cultural differences make a difference. And this is another really interesting fact. Research shows that the firstborn generation of immigrants to America become Americanized and probably won't take care of their loved one at home. So moving forward, not only do we have a generational change, but we have a cultural change occurring.
Change.
Yeah, so language barriers,
Culture.
communication, understanding cultural differences, food are going to be impacted. And I know this. I grew up in the Midwest, and my wife, who's from Puerto Rico, I made the big mistake of thinking, like a lot of people when I grew up, that if you were Hispanic, you were from Mexico. Well, my wife changed my mind on all that. In fact, it is equivalated into the fact that I've eaten more yellow rice and black beans in the last 30 years than I ever did in the first 26. So, I mean, there's a lot going on here,
Right.
and it's pretty cool, the change that's happening. What y'all need to know as consumers is what facility is right for you.
Right, right. So we're going to talk about that in our next segment.